All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you to everyone joining today. My name is Kareem Farah, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of the Modern Classrooms Project, and I will be leading today's presentation. The goal today, it's probably going to take maybe 20 minutes, depending on how many questions we get. And the goal here is just to articulate exactly what we do, how we do it, and how you could potentially get your school or district to partner with us for our Summer Institute. So I'm going to run through all the details of the organization, the model, as well as how schools and districts partner with us, particularly as we focus around the summer, and then we'll close. So let's go ahead and start talking about the organization, the mission. So I, as a teacher and the co-founder of the organization, was really trying to figure out a way to better support my students, particularly my students with a high diversity of learning levels and social emotional needs. While I was in the classroom, I built the blended self-paced mastery-based instructional approach we use at the Modern Classrooms Project along my co-founder. And we really just lead a movement of educators in implementing this model to really improve educator effectiveness and learner understanding. Now, the model itself was built off the premise that traditional models of teaching actually ignore students' needs. I felt this struggle every single day. I would stand at the front of the room. I would lecture at students. My on-grade level and present students would say, the content's too easy. Can I move on? My absent students would say, hey, I can't catch up. I don't know what to do next. I'd give them a packet or some sort of structure to help them catch up, and it just wasn't sufficient. And then my below proficient students would say, hey, I'm lost. I need more targeted support. I need some more one-on-one and small group time, and I just wasn't able to supply that. So ultimately, as an educator, I started to feel like a failure. It wasn't because admin was telling me I was a failure. It wasn't because anyone told me I was underperforming as an educator. It was built off the fundamental notion that I actually just wasn't supporting my students' needs particularly effectively. And we experienced these problems, so we sought to develop a new approach to teaching and learning that would better meet students' needs. And that's what inspired the creation of our instructional model. Now, if you haven't seen this video, I'm not going to play it today on the webinar, but this is the best way to understand our instructional approach. This is the Edutopia video that features myself and our head of teaching and learning, Kate Gaskell, and just shows you in real application what our classrooms looked like when we implemented this model and what modern classrooms across the country should look and feel like. So when you get a chance, if you haven't done so already, definitely check it out. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually detail the core components of the model. So first and foremost, we go through blended instruction. The idea is students are actually accessing new content from teacher-created videos. By doing that, we then unleash the capacity to let students work at their own pace, really empowering educators to differentiate instruction and ultimately getting to the point where we're actually grading students on mastery. So students do not travel from one lesson to the next because it's a different day of the week, but instead it's actually based on what they have mastered in the particular unit. So what does this actually look like and what will we train teachers to do? So first, let's focus on blended instruction. From a blended instruction standpoint, our educators eliminate whole class lectures from normal classroom structure. Now, I want to stress the fact that we're talking about eliminating whole class lectures, not collaborative experiences, not labs, not discussions, not Paideia seminars. We're talking about those moments in time where the teacher is delivering information to the whole group, kids are taking notes, maybe a couple checks for understanding, but largely a pretty disengaging process and usually end up teaching to the middle. But what's unique about our work is we actually empower teachers to develop their own instructional videos. So our educators during our program will literally learn how to build their own instructional videos, just like this instructional video created by Laura Fizer, one of our mentors, who's a kindergarten teacher out in Pennsylvania. So this is a key element of how our model is different and why our program is unique. So a lot of educators across the country, as a consequence of the pandemic, have actually started to dive into this idea that they can be their own instructional video creators. But ultimately, not everyone actually understands the research and the structures and the systems you need to put in place to build instructional videos at scale. So that's something educators will learn. Additionally, these instructional videos are creative and personal. That's what distinguishes them from your cookie cutter ed tech programs. What we saw as educators was when I just outsourced myself, when I found a video externally or I used a Khan Academy, first, a lot of times my students really struggle to understand that content. Those videos assume perfect proficiency up to that point. They're not built for a classroom of a high diversity of learning levels. Second, my kids were frustrated. They said, why are you my teacher? What do you know? Why should I trust you? So it really hurt my capacity to build relationships with students. So ultimately what we're doing here is we're helping teachers clone themselves. Every educator says, I don't have enough time to be able to do everything that I want to do. It's absolutely the case. I never felt like I had enough time, but certainly when I started to eliminate myself talking at the front of the room, I unleashed so much time for myself to be able to support students in one-on-one and small group instruction. From there, we dive into self-paced structure. Now, once you get rid of that live lecture, there's nothing that now requires kids to be sitting and doing the exact same thing at the same time. So in our classroom, students are self-paced within each unit of study. I want to stress that within each unit of study component. It's largely designed because A, we think it's quite dangerous if we just let kids self-pace endlessly in a year. We don't scaffold self-pacing in that way. Ultimately, some kids will be on unit 5 and other kids on unit 2. That's not particularly productive in making sure that we're really shrinking the opportunity gap and supporting students. So in our model, every kid's on the same unit. Sometimes even only half units at a time is what we're self-pacing. So there's clear guardrails and structures. So kids have a set of lessons they're tackling in a fixed amount of time. It also allows teachers, schools, and districts to still administer those end of course exams, common assessments, and stay in line with whatever your grade level team is working on. So it really ensures that you're not radically deviating from the core structures that you need to put in place as a school or a district, but instead allowing educators to create flexible pacing within each unit and then help personalize instruction. Now, ultimately, you're probably asking, everyone usually asks the same question at this point, which is what happens if all my kids don't master every skill? Well, our teachers actually classify lessons as must do, should do, and aspire to do, creating a structure so that our students who are falling really far behind, maybe experiencing trauma, struggling with attendance, can focus on those must do lessons in a unit, those lessons that are critical to the understanding of the content and to moving on to the next unit, while other students might be able to tackle must do, should do, and aspire to do, creating personalized pathways for students based on need. And then finally, our teachers track each student's progress daily using public and personal pacing trackers. Now, we absolutely encourage educators to customize. Some teachers will use trackers like this. These game boards are very popular at the middle school and elementary school level. This allows an educator to create a pathway for students. They travel from one box to the next during the unit. There's suggested deadlines for each box, and educators can track that progress. In addition to that, lots of educators like public trackers designed to really encourage collaboration. Kids walk in, check where they're at, go work with their peers, and continue to tackle content with suggested pace at the top. Finally, we built this model so we could get to the point where we're actually grading students on mastery. The goal here is to really empower educators to measure whether kids master a skill and then empower a student to move forward and or continue to work on that given skill if they haven't quite mastered it yet. Now, in our classrooms, every teacher builds mastery checks. They act like exit tickets, but they're not to exit the room, but instead to figure out if a student's actually mastered the skill on that particular lesson. And then the second phase of mastery-based grading is really defining the criteria for mastery and then helping students reach it through the core ideas of revision, reassessment, and reflection. I was a high school math teacher when I built this model, and I was frustrated by the idea that for some reason it felt like revision was reserved for paper writing in your humanities classes and wasn't actually baked into the way that we taught STEM. So we want every teacher, regardless of content area, regardless of grade level, to really infuse revision as a core element of students' work, as well as reassessment and reflection. Now, that's the breakdown of the model. Now, the impacts. Now, we measured the impacts of our model in a control study we conducted with Johns Hopkins School of Education. And we took a sample of 55 teachers, about half of which were modern classroom educators, the other half were traditional educators. And we did the same with 1,900 students in those respective classrooms. And we saw statistically significant positive gains first on the student end. We saw just across the board, kids were able to say that they were teaching themselves new things more, learning how to use technology more, getting more personal support and encouragement from their teacher, which is critical, and they were more responsible for their own learning. Anyone seeking to cultivate school buildings and districts and classrooms that are built around student-centered instruction, that's what came to life in the study from the student perspective. But what was much more explosive was the teacher impacts. What we saw from teachers was first, significantly more of a capacity to support students in helping them catch up. Only 11% of traditional teachers felt like they could do this versus 100% of ours. 44% of traditional educators feel like they can serve all learning levels, 89% of ours. Only 14% of traditional educators feel like they can teach effective study skills versus 100% of ours. And the most important data point to me as the CEO of the organization is, are we actually empowering educators to work closely one-on-one in small groups with students? Ultimately, we cannot respond to students' needs. We can't respond effectively to the moment. We can't personalize instruction if we're not creating more time for teachers to connect with students in a much smaller setting. What this largely speaks to is that our educators and our model are built around differentiation. I've always said that differentiation is the most overused and under-executed term in education. It's the backbone of our model. It's what we're most proud of when we see educators implement. And the study actually points to an overwhelming positive support for our model from the perspective of students and teachers, with the strongest effects being on educators' ability to differentiate, with secondary effects on their ability to engage in self-directed learning. Now, this is a unique time for folks to actually start to think about adoption for our model. The whole point of this particular model is to really think about how we can personalize instruction. Now, the challenge at the moment, if you go on social media, if you're reading articles, if you're on LinkedIn, you're going to find all these debates about the impacts of COVID-19 and the pandemic on students. Ultimately, I'm not particularly interested in debating about learning loss. What I care more about is what we all can commonly agree on, which is that we know there's going to be a greater diversity of academic and social emotional needs. That's just the reality of the moment. And ultimately, if we know that that's the case, we have to create classrooms that personalize instruction to meet the unique needs of students. If we don't do that, we're going to be looking at students coming into our classroom, some experienced trauma, maybe fell off the map for 11 months, sitting next to another student who's comfortable learning in the remote and hybrid environment. We cannot treat those two students the exact same and assume that they require the exact same subset of supports. That's not going to be meeting students where they're at and building equitable classrooms. And speaking about equitable classrooms, I want to talk about these three core ideas that we think support the notion that we need to create classrooms that actually meet students' needs effectively. First, we need to change the status quo. The students who experience trauma or are frequently missing class or are several grade levels behind are just going to slip through the cracks. This seems to be just the status quo of what we accept sometimes as educators in school buildings, that if we are doing our best, this group of students aren't going to necessarily be able to succeed. That should not be the reality we accept, and our model is built around the premise that any student can be successful, and we build the structures to make that happen. And for that to be the case, we have to provide students with an unrestricted access and opportunity to learn. If I'm a student who has to miss class because I'm taking care of my younger siblings, and when I do come to school, the only way I catch up is by looking through a packet of material without any lesson or anything like that. That's probably not a great way of providing an unrestricted opportunity to learn and changing the status quo for students who are frequently missing school. Instead, if that student can watch an instructional video, pick up where they left off, have a clear on-ramp to success and a pathway to where they need to be and where they're going, they're going to feel significantly more supported and are far more likely to achieve success and master skills. And then finally, we need to focus on equity and not equality, where traditional systems oftentimes enforce equality. Every kid, same lesson, same day, no matter what's going on in their lives. You could have missed lessons 1 through 4, but we're just going to give you lesson 5 today because that's what the pacing calendar says. It's Wednesday and it's lesson 5. That doesn't make any sense. It certainly doesn't focus on the idea of equity. It takes the premise that equality is the way we need to teach our students. So our model really focuses on equity. Every student's needs are met. We're going to figure out where you're at, and we're going to provide you with the targeted supports to get you to where you need to be. And that's going to happen in more individualized and small group models. Now, I want to talk and pivot to how we actually support teachers, and particularly how we can partner with schools and districts. Now, there's 2 ways to learn our model. There's our free course and our virtual mentorship program. Now, our free course is the most popular way folks actually learn our model at the moment because it's available to anyone and everyone. We currently have enrolled 23,000 teachers in just 2020 alone in our free course. It has all the access to our tutorials and content. So I strongly encourage you, if you leave this call and say, look, I don't intend to partner formally yet with the Modern Classrooms Project, but I certainly think their content and principles are cool, fantastic. Send every educator you know our free course. It's at learn.modernclassrooms.org. But the virtual mentorship program is actually how we build partnerships with schools and districts, and I want to articulate how that works on this call. So what is the actual virtual mentorship program? Well, if you're an educator and you're teaching 5th grade math, and you want to figure out how to implement the Modern Classroom Project model, if you enroll in our virtual mentorship program, usually through a school or district partnership, you're going to get paired with another educator who currently implements the model very effectively. They're likely going to be a STEM educator if you're a math teacher. They're likely going to be a secondary teacher to ensure that there's commonality in grade level and content area. And that educator is responsible for supporting you in a smaller setting as you travel through our program, learn our model, and have one-on-one calls with your mentor as you think about implementation. It's designed to both emulate our classroom approach, but also ensure that educators' time is used effectively. Educators are not sitting through long synchronous sessions learning about theory, but instead actually building the things they need to implement their classroom approach and getting the one-on-one support they need. In addition to that, it's important to note we're approved for micro-credentials, graduate credits, and continuing education credits. So if you're a district wondering, how can I provide my educators with a professional development that's powerful, that's useful to them, and that is also approved to provide credit so they can continue to get recertified, our model is approved in every single aspect. It can be. Now, what does the actual experience look like? Well, the virtual mentorship program tends to take educators between 25 and 30 hours to travel through. The goal of the program is to build 3 full modern classroom lessons that are ready for the students. And they do that by first creating mastery checks, where they're choosing the learning objective, setting the criteria for mastery, and executing. The second phase is to actually create their own instructional videos. They're going to record instructional videos with guided notes and all the enhancements they need. They're going to create a self-pacing plan where they actually classify those lessons as must do, should do, and aspire to do, and build a pacing tracker and then describe the strategies they use for it. And then finally, they're going to optimize their learning management system and think about their classroom layout before building the 3 complete modern classroom lessons. And I want to emphasize the fact that we don't introduce new technology into buildings. The goal is to actually support educators in using the technology you have. So if you're a Google Classroom district, great. Your teachers are going to build this content in Google Classroom. They're going to actually use that LMS effectively. Same if you're in Canvas, Schoology, Blackboard, Microsoft Teams. The idea is not to introduce new challenges to what you've created at your district, but instead ensure that educators are using the tools available to them effectively. As one teacher put it, I had a call with a teacher just yesterday who said, you all are the toolbox that helps me use the tools effectively, which is our goal. Now, there's really 2 phases of time where you actually can learn our model. The first is the Summer Institute, and then the second is actually during the school year. And the Summer Institute is 4 weeks. That's the most popular time. I'm going to introduce you to how that works in a moment. And then the school year model is 8 to 12 weeks. So some schools and districts like to have teachers going through the program during the school year, but most popular is the Summer Institute. That's what's around the corner. That's what's filling up fast. That's the opportunity I want to detail for you all right now. So how does the Summer Institute work? Well, there's going to be 3 sessions of the Summer Institute. They're each 4 weeks long. It costs $495 to participate either in our Summer Institute or in our virtual mentorship program in general. It's the same cost per educator. And essentially, educators will travel through the sessions. They will be working with their mentor, so they get the virtual mentorship program, and they get some live presentations on each component of the actual instructional model, and subject-specific office hours and a private discussion board with optional sessions. Very robust program, 4 weeks long, largely self-paced and asynchronous. So there's a few live sessions that are encouraged, but even those, if a teacher can't make it to, they'll be recorded and sent to them. What matters more is it's a 4-week chunk of time with clear deadlines for assignments, and those are the time frames in which educators actually building all the tools they need to implement our model effectively. So this is the program that is officially launched. Our goal is to actually train between 1,000 and 1,300 educators this summer. Our capacity is quickly shrinking. We have already reserved over 750 spots to our Summer Institute, and that's accelerating fairly quickly. So it's a good time to be listening to this presentation. If you're a school or district leader who wants to enroll educators into our program, now is probably the time to reach out and get that going. Now, we have partnerships across the country. We've made it to Hawaii, Alaska, we're in California, we're across the Midwest, we're across the East Coast, we're in the South. So schools and districts across the country have partnered with us. These are existing partners. We've already signed partnerships with about 45 schools and districts this summer, and they come in all shapes and sizes. We have individual schools we partner with where only 10 teachers are traveling through the program. And then we have partnerships with large districts where hundreds of teachers will travel through the program in cohorts to learn our model and start implementing in the classroom. It is important to note that we're an opt-in model. We only train teachers who want to be trained. So we do not partner with schools and districts who say, look, I want every single teacher to go through our program. Instead, we target teachers who actually want to learn the model, and we recruit them alongside school and district leaders. So my last slide before I answer questions and let you all go on this Thursday afternoon or evening, depending on where you are in the country, is how you actually take the next steps. So the first thing a school or district leader will do if they want to sign a partnership is they'll reach out to us. And then they'll determine the number of educators you actually are willing to fund through the program. So if you're a district and you support 1,000 teachers, you say, look, I have enough funding for 50 teachers to go through the Summer Institute. You reach out to us, you articulate what you're looking for, we'll schedule a call, and at that stage, we're going to go into the recruitment phase. We're going to put a contract together and we're going to say, okay, it's time to recruit those 50 educators. So we're going to host virtual presentations just like this, but more teacher friendly, where we're actually going to articulate the model, the vision, the purpose to teachers. There, the educators will be able to fill out a survey and actually opt in and say, yes, I'm really interested in this model. I would like to move forward. Fantastic. And then we're also going to provide you with email outreach materials. That's the recruitment process. Once that's all set, we develop that contract and invoice, and we put educators through the program so they can travel through and learn our instructional approach. Those are the core steps to executing a partnership with a Modern Classrooms project. I cannot stress enough that we partner with schools and districts of all shapes and sizes, charter partners, large districts, small schools, everything in between, individual schools within a large district. We really like to have a diversity of partners and ultimately care more about finding educators who are anxious and excited to really innovate and change the game for classroom instruction. So from there, I want to provide you all with 2 links. The first is, if you're interested in learning more about Summer Institute, there's a link you can go to right here, modernclassrooms.org/summer-institute. And if you actually just want to schedule a call with us and get things going, you should fill out our partnership interest form. This partnership interest form allows you to indicate exactly what it is that you want to do, and then one of our team members will actually schedule a call with you to talk through next steps. I can show you what that partnership interest form will actually ask you right now. So I'm going to take you to that right now so you can see exactly what it looks like. And then that's my calendar. Not particularly interesting. So that didn't pan out right. Let's see if I can actually find this better. Sorry about that. So when you go on our website to access our partnership interest form, you can just go ahead and go to our Summer Institute page. So when you look under what we do, it's also in this big bar at the top here. We're launching our biggest PD yet, which is true. You can go to the what we do page and you can actually head over to our virtual mentorship page or go to the drop-down menu and go to Summer Institute. Then once you're in Summer Institute, you can see all the details about the Summer Institute, what it's going to entail, the pricing and all that good stuff. One of my favorite documents to check out is actually the session calendars. If you click on one of these session calendars, you can actually see all the different components of optional and live sessions that happen during the actual Summer Institute itself. And then if you're interested in actually participating in the Summer Institute, you can go through 2 pathways. The first is to just go to the partnership interest form. If you go to the partnership interest form, this allows you to submit all the information we need from you before scheduling a call. Your name, your email address, where you work, what you do, a few sentences about your goals, how many teachers you would ideally put through, all that good stuff, and we'll schedule a call. Additionally, if a couple teachers or just one teacher wants to enroll, you can also see the enrollment options for individual educators. You know, some teachers want to travel through this individually and just want their school or district to fund that journey as well. So that covers those 2 core elements. I'm going to now drop this partnership interest form in the chat so everyone can have it. And then from there, I will answer any lingering questions. Okay, thank you for putting it in the chat. All right. So what questions, let me make sure this is the right one. There it is. So what questions do folks have? I'm going to look in the chat now and see if there's anything I can answer. I see one question, instructional coaches, and whether instructional coaches can travel through it. And the answer is absolutely yes. Kate, thanks for answering this question. We have tons of instructional leaders who go through our program alongside educators or individually. In fact, as we speak, there's a couple principals, a couple superintendents who are currently traveling through our mentorship program to learn our model and get the support that they need. Have you had schools use learning loss funds to pay for teachers to participate? Absolutely. This is incredibly common. I'm not exactly sure when you say learning loss funds, I would imagine those funds you're referring to are CARES Act dollars that are coming from Title I and Title II dollars. Kira, definitely correct me if I'm wrong, if that's not the case. We have seen a ton of educators use those dollars. Our model in very many ways is built to respond to the moment and really find a way to move forward after the moment. So folks are absolutely using federal grant dollars and state dollars to fund educators through our program. It's a very popular way to pay for our work. Any other questions? Feel free to drop them in the chat or in the Q&A box and I will answer them. And if not, I will let you all jump. But I built instructional videos likely because I wasn't very good at wait time. So I'm going to wait until 6:30 Eastern time. And then if there's no questions up until 6:30, we are good to go. And if you're on the call and have access to a chat, go ahead and drop in the chat what your role is, your name and your role at your particular school or district. It would be great to get a feel for who's actually on the call, and more importantly, what your role is in your school community. All right, I'm gonna give it one more minute. Oh, nice. We have Paul Holt, high school teacher, love it. Another teacher on here. I'm so glad to see a number of educators, a school principal on here. Fantastic. Virtual academy coach, fantastic. From a lot of different spots, a number of places in California. Great to hear. Folks, if you are interested in partnering or just scheduling a call to understand how a partnership works, I strongly encourage you to fill out that form because we can have a more intimate one-on-one small group call to really understand your needs. All right. It looks like there's no more additional questions. So without further ado, it was wonderful sharing these opportunities with you all. Thank you all for jumping on. Hopefully this is useful. Oh, it says 1 sec. It looks like we got another question. Keep it coming, Paul. I should have honored and respected the fact that I said I'd stay till 6:30. Oh, good question, Paul. So Paul asked, should we plan to set up the entire year's worth of lessons in one summer or ahead of the game? You know, Paul, most folks are actually planning a unit in advance, essentially. So, I mean, the more ahead you can plan, the better. But if you're a first-time implementer of our model, it's actually valuable to not over-plan ahead because you're going to want to tweak things and really just make changes over time. So we strongly encourage that educators plan one unit in advance. That ensures that they feel stable, productive, and capable of executing effectively. So that's my suggestion. Focus on one unit at a time. If you want to do 2 units at a time, that's great. And in your question around what's the idea of time per lesson, you know, this all depends on educator and your experience with tech fluency. Expect the early stages. It takes a little time, right? It can take 2-3 hours to build, you know, an instructional video and feel comfortable with that. Once you get comfortable with it, I'd say 2 hours per lesson to do the whole thing from start to finish. And if you have your slide decks built already, like you've created slide decks in the past and all that good stuff, video can take anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes at most. And then you want to build the supplemental materials. So, you know, oftentimes what a lot of teachers do is they devote one long Sunday, because we know teachers spend far too much time on the weekends working, building a full unit out, and it's ready to go. And then they're able to launch that unit once the unit launches, and they're good to go for that full unit. And while the unit's running, they're focusing on their next unit of planning. Happy to help, Paul. Good, great questions. All right. Going once, going twice on any others. Agreed, Jeff. The planning is time consuming, but it is absolutely worth it. And folks, by the way, if you're interested in mastery-based grading, my new piece with Cult to Pedagogy, which is where a lot of folks actually have access to potential partnerships, will be coming out this Sunday. So feel free to pop in there and see some more details. It talks a little bit about the planning and the structure around this. That should be going live on the 7th of March. Thank you so much, everyone, for jumping on. Hopefully this was useful. Hopefully we'll be partnering with a few of your schools and districts. And if not, get in that free course. You all can plan as well and kind of implement as well. So very exciting. Thanks for your time. And hopefully we will be chatting with some of y'all in the not so distant future. Bye, everyone.